The emergency beacon cut through the cosmic silence like a scream in the void. Captain Sarah Chen stood frozen on the bridge of the Endurance, watching the holographic display flicker with humanity's final transmission. Earth, their blue marble. Home was nothing more than a smoldering husk in the view screen, its surface cracked and bleeding molten fire into space. "Captain," whispered Communications Officer Torres, his voice breaking. "The signal, ... it's repeating on all frequencies." The message played again, crackling with static and desperation. Asterisk, "This is Earth Defense Command. We are the last. The Devourers have broken through our final line. If anyone receives this transmission, know that humanity fought to the end. We stood alone." The signal dissolved into white noise. Sarah's hands trembled as she gripped the command chair. Round her, the bridge crew sat in stunned silence. 12 billion souls. Gone. Just like that. "Ma'am," Navigation Officer Park spoke up, his Asian features pale in the blue glow of the displays. "We're receiving another transmission. It's not human." The main screen shifted, revealing a massive crystalline vessel that dwarfed their small exploration ship. The Endurance could fit inside its smallest appendage. As they watched, more ships materialized from hyperspace-leak vessels of impossible beauty, their hulls shimmering with technologies beyond human understanding. The ethereals had arrived, but they were 3 days too late. "Open a channel," Sarah commanded, her voice steady despite the storm raging in her chest. The screen flickered, revealing a being of pure luminescence. The ethereal's form shifted and flowed like living starlight, ancient and terrible in its beauty. When it spoke, its voice resonated in harmonics that made the ship's hull vibrate. "Greetings, remnant of Earth. I am Luxorus of the Ethereal Conclave. We have come to offer aid." Sarah felt something cold and hard settle in her stomach. "Where were you 3 days ago?" The being's light dimmed. "We ... debated. The Conclave required consensus before you debated." Sarah's voice was ice. "While our children burned, you debated." The silence stretched between them, heavy with accusation and shame. "Captain Chen," the ethereal said finally, somehow knowing her name. "There are other human colonies, scattered settlements across the Outer Rim. They too face the Devourer threat. We ... we wish to make amends." Amends. Sarah laughed, but there was no humor in it. "You want to make amends for letting Earth die while you held committee meetings?" Luxorus's form pulsed with what might have been pain. The Conclave was divided. Some believed humanity too primitive, too violent to be worth preserving. Others argued for intervention. By the time we reached consensus, ... it was too late. Sarah stood, her compact frame radiating fury. "How many of you are there? How many species bowed to your precious conclave?" 43 civilizations acknowledge our guidance. We have maintained galactic peace for 10,000 years. 43 civilizations, Sarah repeated slowly. And not one of them thought a few million ships could spare humanity from extinction. The ethereal's light flickered erratically. "You do not understand the complexity? No, you don't understand." Sarah stepped closer to the screen. "You had the power to save 12 billion lives, and you chose bureaucracy instead. Now you come offering scraps when the feast is over." Captain Torres whispered urgently. "Long-range sensors are detecting something. Multiple contacts. Coming. Fast." Sarah's blood turned to ice. "Devourers." "No, ma'am. Signatures. ... They're human." The tactical display erupted with new contacts. Ships of every size and description dropping out of hyperspace colony vessels. Mining ships, even converted cargo haulers, bristling with improvised weapons. Sarah recognized the markings. New Damascus, Kepler Station, the Titan shipyards, manatees. Scattered children coming home to see what remained. "This is Admiral Marcus Webb of the Colonial Defense Force." A gruff voice crackled over the comm. "To any ethereal vessels in this system, you are not welcome here." More ships arrived, hundreds, then thousands. They formed a protective shell. Around Earth's corpse, human defiance, written in their battle formations. Luxorus's form brightened with what might have been hope. Perhaps we can work together. Pool our resources against the Devourer threat. No. The word came from every human ship simultaneously. Chorus of rejection that echoed across space. Admiral Webb's weathered face appeared on screen, his eyes hard as asteroid iron. You had your chance, alien. We called for help, begged for aid, offered everything we had in exchange for your protection. And you, deliberated. The situation was complex. The situation was simple. Webb interrupted. People were dying, and you chose politics over lives. Now you want to be friends? The Admiral's laugh was bitter. Humanity doesn't need friends who abandon us in our darkest hour. Sarah watched as the ethereal fleet began to withdraw, their crystalline ships fading into hyperspace one by one. Only Luxorus remained, its form flickering with something that looked disturbingly like grief. You did not understand, the being said softly. The Devourers consume everything. Without unity, without the Conclave's support, you will all perish. Maybe, Sarah replied, but we'll perish as humans, not as pets to beings who see us as acceptable losses. Luxorus's image wavered. This is not how it was meant to be. We, I wished to preserve your species. Then you should have acted when it mattered. Sarah's voice was final. Goodbye, Luxorus of the ethereal conclave. When you return to your 43 civilizations, tell them this. Humanity remembers who stood with us and who stood aside. The screen went dark around Earth's burning corpse. Humanity's survivors began the long task of mourning their dead and preparing for war. They would face the Devourers alone. They had always faced their greatest challenges. But in the depths of space, aboard a crystalline ship that had seen the birth and death of civilizations, Luxorus stared at the retreating human fleet and felt something its species had not experienced in millennia. Regret. Chapter 2. The Weight of Silence, 3 months after Earth's fall. The first human colonies began to disappear. Luxorus drifted through the observation chamber of the ethereal flagship Resonance, watching helplessly as another star system fell dark on the galactic display. New Shanghai, population, 4 million. Now, nothing but cosmic dust and devourer-feeding signatures. The humans refuse all offers of assistance, reported Silas, another member of the Conclave. Its crystalline form pulsed with frustration. Their Admiral Webb has declared human space off-limits to all ethereal vessels. They have pride, Luxorus said softly. Perhaps the one thing we failed to account for in our calculations. Pride is a luxury they cannot afford against the Devourers, Silas replied coldly. Their colonies fall one by one. Soon there will be nothing left to save. The display showed the expanding wave of destruction sweeping toward the Outer Rim territories. The Devourers moved like a plague, consuming everything in their path planets. Stars, entire civilizations reduced to raw matter to fuel their endless hunger. The Zephyrians have requested additional protection for their border worlds, Silas continued. The crystalline hegemony demands we prioritize their core systems. The Void singers all civilizations that stood by while Earth burned. Luxorus interrupted. All members of our precious conclave who found reasons to delay, to debate, to deliberate, while 12 billion humans died. Silas's form flared brighter. You speak as if you opposed the decision. You were part of the vote, Luxorus. Your own uncertainty contributed to the delay. The accusation hit like a physical blow. Luxorus had indeed hesitated, swayed by arguments about human aggression. Their tendency toward violence, their relative technological primitiveness. The Conclave had spent 3 crucial days debating humanity's worthiness while Earth's defenders made their final stand. I carry that burden, Luxorus admitted. We all do, whether we acknowledge it or not. The chamber's walls suddenly hummed with an incoming transmission. Luxorus recognized the quantum signature of a human vessel, broadcasting on stolen ethereal frequencies. This is Captain Chen of the Endurance. We know you're monitoring our communications. I have something you need to see. The display shifted, showing the aftermath of the Kepler Station battle. The human colony had been a mining outpost, 300,000 souls working the asteroid fields. Now it was gone, but the wreckage told a story that made even the ancient ethereals pause in shock. The debris field was massive. It's filled not just with human ships, but with something else. Twisted metal and organic components that could only be devourer remains. Hundreds of the bioships, their feeding tentacles, severed, their core masses scattered across space like broken dreams. They fought alone, Captain Chen's voice continued, her words heavy with exhaustion. 300,000 miners, dock workers, and their families. No military training, no advanced weapons, just improvised ships and the will to survive. Tactical analysis made Luxorus's form flicker with disbelief. According to the data, the humans had jury-rigged mining equipment into weapons, turned cargo haulers into ram ships, and somehow managed to destroy a devourer fleet 10 times their size. The final transmission from Kepler Station, Chen continued, was not a cry for help. It was tactical data. Devourer weak points, behavioral patterns, feeding cycles. Everything they learned in their last hours transmitted to other human colonies. The recording shifted to Admiral Webb's scarred face. Luxorus, I know you're listening. Your conclave spent 3 days debating whether humanity was worth saving. Our people at Kepler spent 3 hours learning how to kill the unkillable. Each of us showed wisdom. The transmission ended, leaving the observation chamber in heavy silence. Impossible, Silas whispered. No species has ever successfully engaged the devourers in direct combat. They adapt too quickly, evolve too fast. The humans are not adapting to fight the devourers, Luxorus said slowly, understanding beginning to dawn. They are teaching the devourers to fear them. Another transmission burst through the quantum static. This one from the mining world of Ceres Prime. The colonists had received Kepler's data and improved on it, turning their entire asteroid into a weapon. When the devourers arrived expecting easy prey, they found a planet-sized bomb that took out half their fleet. Then came signals from Haven Colony, from the Titan shipyards, from dozens of human settlements, each one sharing data, tactics, innovations born from desperation and refined by necessity. The scattered children of Earth were not just surviving, they were learning to hunt. This changes everything, Luxorus said. The conclave must be informed. The conclave made its position clear, Silas replied. Humanity rejected our aid. They are no longer our concern. They rejected our aid because we offered it 3 days too late, Luxorus snapped. But they are still fighting our war. The that consume human worlds will grow stronger, more numerous. Eventually they will reach ethereal space. Then we will face them with the combined might of 43 civilizations. Combined might that has never once successfully stopped a devourer advance, Luxorus interrupted. We retreat, evacuate, establish new defensive lines, always falling back, always losing ground. The humans are the first species to actually push back. The observation chamber filled with the harmonic chiming that indicated an emergency conclave session. Luxorus watched as the forms of the galaxy's most advanced beings materialized in the chamber, creatures of pure energy. Ancient machines. Evolved beyond the need for physical form. Archon Vorthok, eldest of the ethereals, spoke first. The human situation grows dire. Perhaps it is time to reconsider limited aid. Why? The voice belonged to Zexstar of the hive minds. They rejected our offer. Let them face the consequences of their pride. Because Luxorus said, surprising itself with the force of its own words, they are winning. The chamber fell silent. Explain, Vorthok commanded. Luxorus shared the battle data from Kepler Station, from Ceres Prime, from a dozen human colonies that had turned the art of dying into the science of killing. The conclave studied the information in stunned silence. Unprecedented, whispered Tysa of the Void Singers. No species has ever inflicted such casualties on the devourers. They fight like cornered animals, Zexstar dismissed. Desperate and doomed. No, Luxorus said quietly. They fight like something we have forgotten how to be. They fight like survivors. Admiral Webb's transmission crackled through space 1. More time, his words carrying across the void to reach every corner of ethereal space, to the conclave. To the 43 civilizations that call themselves advanced, You had your chance to stand with us. Now watch as we do what you never could. We will not just survive the devourers. We will teach them that some prey bites back." As the transmission ended, Luxorus felt the weight of the Conclave's attention. For 10,000 years, they had been the galaxy's guardians, the wise arbiters of peace and order. But now, watching humanity's scattered fleets prepare for their impossible war, Luxorus wondered if wisdom had become just another word for cowardice. The humans had rejected their aid, yes, but perhaps that rejection was the most human thing. Of all the refusal to accept that some fights could not be won in the depths of space. The Devourers continued their advance toward human colonies. Driven by an hunger older than stars, they had no idea what was waiting for them. Chapter 3: The Art of Defiance, 6 months after Earth's fall. The impossible happened. The Devourer advance stopped. Luxorus stared at the galactic tactical display. Aboard the Resonance, unable to process what the sensors were showing, for the first time in recorded history, a Devourer swarm had not just been slowed or redirected, it had been halted entirely. "Confirm the readings," Luxorus commanded. "Confirmed," replied the ship's analytical matrix. "The Devourer fleet that consumed the Kepler sector has been destroyed. Total casualties, estimated 4,000 bioships, and human losses? Unknown. Human vessels are withdrawing from the engagement zone." Luxorus felt something like awe ripple through its crystalline form. 4,000 Devourers, enough to consume entire star systems, eliminated by the scattered remnants of a species that had been deemed too primitive to save. The communication array chimed with an incoming transmission.
"Admiral Webb's."
Weathered face appeared on screen, but something had changed. The bitter anger was still there, but beneath it was something harder, more dangerous. Confidence. Luxorus, Webb said without preamble. "I'm told you've been monitoring our engagements. The Conclave observes all significant military actions," Luxorus replied carefully. Webb's smile was sharp as a blade. "Then you saw what happened at Thermopylae Station." The name meant nothing to Luxorus, but the battle data spoke volumes. Single human outpost, barely 10,000 defenders, had somehow lured an entire Devourer swarm into a carefully prepared kill zone. The humans had sacrificed their own space dock, rigging it with exotic matter bombs that turned the station into a localized black hole. "You killed your own people," Luxorus said, struggling to understand. "They volunteered," Webb replied simply. "Every last one of them. They knew the plan, knew the cost. And they did it anyway, because they understood something your Conclave never could. Which is, some things are worth dying for." Webb leaned forward. "You want to know the difference between us and you? When faced with an impossible choice, you debate, we act." The transmission shifted to show footage from the battle-human ships, diving into Devourer formations, with no regard for their own survival. Ramming bioships with improvised explosives, turning their own vessels into guided missiles. It was warfare as art, beautiful and terrible in its complete commitment. "We've learned something interesting about your precious Devourers," Webb continued. "They're not actually unstoppable. They just never faced anyone stupid enough to keep fighting after the battle was lost." "This is madness," Luxorus whispered. "No," came another voice. Captain Chen materialized beside Webb, her small frame somehow radiating the same dangerous confidence. "This is evolution. The Devourers made us choose, adapt or die. We chose a third option, which is Chen's smile was predatory. We chose to make them adapt to us." The display showed the aftermath of humanity's impossible victory. Devourer biomatter scattered across space. Their adaptive technologies corrupted by exotic energies, their feeding patterns disrupted. But more importantly, it showed human ships moving with new purpose, carrying something that made Luxorus's form flicker with recognition. "You've weaponized their own biology," Luxorus said. "Kepler Station's final gift," Webb confirmed. 300,000 people died learning how to kill the unkillable. Their sacrifice gave us the Ketha. Devourers don't just consume matter, they consume information. Feed them the right information. And they consume themselves, Chen finished. We've turned their greatest strength into their greatest weakness. The implications hit Luxorus like a stellar shockwave. If humanity had truly cracked the code to devour biology, if they could consistently defeat the swarms that had terrorized the galaxy for millennia. The Conclave will want to study your methods, Luxorus said. Now the Conclave had its chance, Webb replied coldly. You chose neutrality when we needed allies. We've chosen to remember that choice. Admiral, you must understand, the decision was not made lightly. The complexity of galactic politics. Stop. Chun's voice cut through the explanation like a laser. We don't want to hear about politics. We've heard enough words from beings who prefer talk to action. What do you want? Luxorus asked. Webb and Chen exchanged glances. When they looked back, their expressions had shifted from cold hostility to something infinitely more dangerous: pity. We want you to watch, Webb said simply. Watch as the species you deemed unworthy accomplishes what your 43 civilizations never could. Watch as humanity saves a galaxy that turned its back on us. The transmission cut to a wider tactical view, showing human fleets moving throughout the Outer Rim territories, but these weren't desperate evacuation runs or last-ditch defense actions. These were coordinated strikes, surgical attacks on devourer feeding zones, systematic disruption of their expansion patterns. We're not just fighting for our own colonies anymore, Chen explained. We're fighting for everyone. The Vegan Trade Consortium, the Silicon Collective, even the ethereal border worlds. Species that couldn't be bothered to save Earth are being protected by Earth's children. Luxorus felt something like shame pulse through its form. Why? Because that's what humans do, Webb said. Save people even when they don't deserve it. Even when they wouldn't do the same for us. The display showed a human fleet engaging devourers near a crystalline hegemony outpost. The aliens hadn't requested help. Their pride wouldn't allow it. But the humans came anyway, driving off the bioships and disappearing back into space without acknowledgement or thanks. The hegemony leadership claims they drove off the attack themselves, Chen noted with dry amusement. Their people know the truth, but their leaders prefer comfortable lies to uncomfortable deaths. More reports flooded in human interventions. Across a dozen sectors, each one precise and effective, the scattered children of Earth were fighting a war on 40 fronts. Protecting civilizations that had stood silent while their homeworld burned. The devourers are beginning to avoid systems with human presence, Luxorus observed, studying the tactical patterns. They're learning to fear us, Webb confirmed. It's just like we learned to kill them. Evolution in action. But your losses are acceptable, Chen interrupted. Every human ship carries volunteers. Every crew knows the stakes. We've all lost everything once already. What's a little death compared to extinction? The cold pragmatism in her voice made Luxorus shiver. These humans had been forged in the fire of absolute loss, tempered by abandonment, and emerged as something the galaxy had never seen before. Species that fought not for survival, but for principles. The Conclave could still offer assistance, Luxorus said desperately. Combined operations, shared technology, the Conclave offered assistance when it was convenient, Webb replied. When the choice was between helping humanity and maintaining galactic stability, you chose stability. Now that we've proven useful, you want to be friends again. It was never about convenience. It was always about convenience, Chen said quietly. 12 billion lives weighed against political complications, and politics won. We remember that calculation, Luxorus. Every human in the galaxy remembers it. The transmission showed one final image: Earth's burnt corpse, still hanging in space. Like an accusation, human ships moved around it in careful patterns, salvaging what could be saved, honoring what could not be recovered. We're rebuilding, Webb said. Not Earth that's gone forever, but we're rebuilding humanity. Stronger, smarter, less trusting of fair-weather friends. When we're done, Chen added, when the devourers are broken and the galaxy is safe, we'll remember who stood with us in the darkness, who chose to deliberate instead. The transmission ended, leaving Luxorus alone with the weight of humanity's judgment. In the distance, another devourer swarm detected human ships and immediately changed course, fleeing toward less dangerous prey. The predators had become the hunted. The galaxy's newest apex species wore human faces. Luxorus stared at the tactical display and wondered if the Conclave's greatest mistake wasn't failing to save humanity. It was failing to recognize that. Humanity was the one species in the galaxy that didn't need saving. They were the ones doing the saving. Chapter 4. The Price of Wisdom. 1 year after Earth's fall, the galaxy held its breath. The last major Devourer fleet hung at the edge of ethereal space, a massive bioswarm that had consumed 7 star systems in its journey toward the Conclave's core worlds. Behind it lay a trail of devastation that had taken decades to accumulate. Ahead lay the heart of galactic civilization, and between them, impossibly, Luxorus watched from the observation deck of Resonance as Admiral Webb's forces moved into position. 37 ships all that remained of humanity's mobile fleet arrayed against a Devourer swarm that numbered in the tens of thousands. "This is suicide," whispered Archon Borthok beside Luxorus. The ancient ethereal's form flickered with agitation. Even humans cannot be this reckless. But Luxorus had studied human tactics for a year now, watched them turn certain defeat into impossible victory again and again. This wasn't recklessness. This was something else entirely. "Open a channel," Luxorus commanded. Admiral Webb's scarred face appeared on screen, older now, marked by a year of constant warfare. Behind him, the bridge of his flagship Defiance hummed with quiet efficiency. Luxorus, Webb said without warmth. "Come to watch the end of the show, Admiral. You cannot hope to defeat that swarm. Our analysis indicates your analysis is worth about as much as your help was when Earth burned." Webb interrupted. "We know the odds. We've known them for a year." Captain Chen appeared beside Webb, her compact frame somehow radiating absolute confidence. "Funny thing about odds, Luxorus. They're just numbers until someone proves them wrong." The tactical display showed the Devourer swarm advancing, a wall of organic death that had never known defeat. Each bioship was the size of a city, their feeding tentacles capable of stripping entire planets to their cores. "There are other options," Luxorus said desperately. "Evacuation protocols, fallback positions, running away, you mean?" Chen said. "The ethereal solution to every problem. How's that working out for you?" The question hit like a physical blow. For 1,000 years, the Conclave had met every Devourer incursion, the same waste, strategic withdrawal, acceptable losses, containment. Rather than confrontation, they had perfected the art of managed defeat, and here were the humans, with 37 ships and the audacity to believe they could win. Admiral Luxorus tried again. "If you withdraw now, we can coordinate a joint defense of the inner systems, no?" Webb's voice was final. "We've had enough of your coordination, your joint operations, your strategic wisdom. A year ago, you had the chance to stand with us. You chose to stand aside. Now it's our turn to choose." "And what do you choose?" Luxorus asked, though part of it already knew the answer. Webb's smile was terrible in its certainty. "We choose to stand." The transmission cut, leaving the observation deck in stunned silence. Around them, the ethereal fleet, thousands of crystalline ships representing the pinnacle of galactic technology, held position at what their calculations deemed a safe distance. Safe distance. "Beginning their attack run," reported the tactical officer. Luxorus watched in horrified fascination as the tiny human fleet accelerated toward the Devourer swarm. It was like watching insects challenge a hurricane. David facing Goliath, armed with nothing but stones and stubborn pride. But as the battle began, something impossible started to happen. The humans weren't just attacking, they were dancing there. Ships moved in patterns that defied conventional tactics, weaving between bioships with impossible precision. They struck like surgical scalpels, targeting specific points with exotic matter weapons that turned Devourer strengths into weaknesses. "They're using our own technology against us," transmitted the lead bioship, its voice a harmony of hunger and confusion that somehow reached ethereal receivers. "They have learned our songs, stolen our evolution," Luxorus realized with dawning horror that the humans had done more than just fight the Devourers for a year. They had studied them, learned from them, incorporated their technology into human ships. The weapons being fired weren't just human inventions. They were hybrid technologies, It's born from the marriage of human desperation and devourer biology. Impossible, Vorthok whispered. No species can safely interface with devourer biotechnology. The corruption alone, the humans are already corrupted, Luxorus said quietly, understanding flooding through its crystalline form. They have nothing left to lose. On screen, Captain Chin's ship dove into the heart of the swarm, its hull, writhing with organic enhancements that pulsed in rhythm with her heartbeat. She wasn't just fighting the devourers, she'd become partially devourer herself. Human consciousness, married to alien biology in a synthesis that should have been impossible. This is Chen to all ships. Her voice crackled over the cum, distorted by biomechanical interference. Final protocol is authorized. It's been an honor serving with you all. No, Luxorus breathed, finally understanding what the humans intended. The human ships began to glow. Their hulls superheating as exotic. Matter reactors overloaded in carefully controlled sequences. They weren't trying to win this battle through superior firepower or tactics. They were turning themselves into weapons. Admiral Luxorus transmitted frantically. There must be another way. There is another way, Webb replied, his image flickering. As his ship's systems began to fail, Conclave could have chosen it a year ago. Could have stood with us, fought beside us, shared the burden of protecting the galaxy. Instead, you chose wisdom over courage, deliberation over action. The first human ship reached critical mass, its death creating a localized space-time distortion that shredded a dozen bioships. Then another and another, each sacrifice precisely calculated to maximum effect.
How you get
To live with the consequences of that choice, Webb continued, his voice growing faint as his ship's power systems cascaded toward failure. You get to watch the species you abandon, save the galaxy that abandoned them. Admiral, please tell the Conclave something for me, Luxorus, Webb said. Tell them that humanity's final gift to the galaxy isn't our forgiveness. It's our example. Maybe next time you'll remember what we taught you here. The Defiance exploded in a blast of exotic energies that tore through the heart of the Devourer. Swarm. The chain reaction spread outward. Each human ship's death triggering resonance cascades in the bioship's quantum cores. Within minutes, it was over. The greatest Devourer swarm in recorded history had been reduced to scattered atoms. Their biomatter corrupted beyond any hope of regeneration, and 37 human ships had become 37 new stars, burning bright and brief in the cosmic dark. The observation deck fell silent as the tactical display updated. Devourer forces throughout the galaxy were withdrawing, their collective consciousness traumatized by the loss of their greatest swarm. The immediate threat was over. The galaxy was safe, and humanity was extinct. Send recovery teams, Vorthok commanded quietly. Search for survivors. Escape pods. There are no survivors, Luxorus said, its form dimming with grief. They knew from the beginning this was a one-way trip. Every ship, every crew member, they all volunteered for extinction. The silence stretched longer, heavier, filled with the weight of a decision that could never be undone. They saved us, whispered Tysa of the Void Singers. After everything we Dodor failed to do, they still saved us. They saved everyone, Luxorus corrected. Every species in the galaxy owes its continued existence to 37 human ships and the people who chose to crew them. On the display, the afterglow of humanity's final battle began to fade, leaving only empty space where the Devourer swarm had been. In the distance, ethereal rescue ships moved toward the debris field, searching for something that would never be found. Do we do now? Orthok asked. Luxorus considered the question, feeling the weight of knowledge that had come too late. For 1,000 years, the Conclave had prided itself on wisdom, on careful deliberation, on the long view that transcended individual tragedies. They had been wrong about everything. Now Luxorus said finally, we remember that courage is not the absence of fear, but action in spite of it. We remember that some choices cannot be debated, some crises cannot be managed, some stands must be taken regardless of the cost. And, Vorthok prompted, and we ensure that humanity's sacrifice means something. We change. We become worthy of the gift they gave us. Luxorus turned to face the assembled conclave members. No more deliberation. No more acceptable losses. No more standing aside while others fight our battles. The decision was unanimous, the first time in conclave history that 43 civilizations had agreed on anything without debate. They would remember humanity's example. They would remember the price of choosing wisdom over courage. And they would remember that sometimes the most advanced beings in the galaxy were not the ones with the greatest technology or the longest history. Sometimes the most advanced beings were simply the ones willing to stand when standing seemed impossible. In the void where humanity had made its last stand, space itself seemed to shimmer with possibility, as if the universe itself had been changed by what it had witnessed. The devourers were broken, the galaxy was safe, and regret deep. Eternal, irreversible regret was all that remained. HFY Epilogue, what we learned too, late 20 years after. Humanity's extinction. Luxorus stood in the memorial hall on New Terra World, terraformed in memory of Earth. Populated by the genetic archives humanity had scattered across the galaxy before their final battle. The hall was filled with representatives from all 43 member civilizations of the Conclave, gathered for the annual remembrance. On the walls, holographic displays showed images of Earth in its glory days' blue oceans. White clouds, green continents teeming with life. At the center of the hall stood a simple monument, a piece of scorched metal from the hull of the Defiance. Admiral Webb's flagship. Inscription was brief, written in the simple English that had become the galaxy's unofficial language of courage. Asterisk, they stood alone so others could stand together. Asterisk, a young ethereal barely 1,000 years old approached Luxorus with a question that had haunted the galaxy for 2 decades. Elder Luxorus, if you could speak to Admiral Webb now, what would you say? Luxorus considered the question, its form shimmering with thoughts that had grown heavier with each passing year. In the 2 decades since humanity's sacrifice, the galaxy had indeed changed. The Conclave no longer debated when action was needed. Rescue fleets launched within hours, not days. No species faced extinction alone, but the cost of that wisdom. I would say that we learned, Luxorus replied finally, that their sacrifice was not in vain, that the galaxy they saved has become worthy of their protection. But would they forgive us? The young ethereal pressed. Luxorus was quiet for a long moment, remembering Admiral Webb's final words, Captain Chen's knowing smile. The way 37 human ships had transformed themselves into stars, rather than accept the defeat the Conclave had thought inevitable. I don't think they would need to forgive us, Luxorus said. I think they forgave us the moment they chose to save us anyway. The ceremony continued around them, but Luxorus barely noticed. His thoughts were fixed on a question that had no answer. What if they had acted sooner? What if the Conclave had chosen courage over caution just once? But that was the weight of regret, the knowledge that some choices once made could never be unmade. In the distance, a new ship appeared in the sky, another rescue vessel heading to the outer rim, where devourer scouts still occasionally appeared. The response was always swift now, always decisive. The galaxy had learned to act. They had learned everything, except how to forgive themselves for learning it too late. As the memorial service ended and the representatives of 43 civilizations dispersed to their ships, Luxorus remained standing before the monument. The metal fragment from the Defiance caught the light, reflecting it back in patterns that almost looked like stars, human stars, burning bright and brief in the cosmic dark, lighting the way for those who had forgotten how to shine. The lesson was complete. The teacher was gone, and regret deep, eternal, irreversible regret was all that remained. But perhaps, Luxorus thought, as it finally turned to leave, perhaps regret was enough. Perhaps remembering the cost of their failure would prevent future failures. Honor future choices, save future species from the abandonment humanity had faced. Perhaps 37 ships and their volunteer crews had bought the galaxy something more valuable than safety. Perhaps they had bought it wisdom, real wisdom, the kind that came not from debate and deliberation, But from watching the bravest beings in the universe die alone, swearing it would never happen again, the memorial hall fell silent as the last visitor departed, leaving only the monument and its simple message standing guard over the memory of a species that had saved everyone, even those who had failed to save them.